Welcome back, chess friends. It's game number 22. Labourdonnais is winning 13 games to 4. This means he's already won the match. There's only 4 games remaining. We're still in it to see whether McDonnell can just win any more consolation points. So let's see how he does. We have e4 and e5 from Labourdonnais, and this is daring McDonnell to go for a King's Gambit. We've had 3 King's Gambits so far, and each one of them McDonnell has lost. So this time he goes for the King's Gambit once more. Hopefully he does better this time, but it's already not feeling good to my sense. The King's Gambit is accepted as usual, and we have a bishop to c4, queen to h4 with check, and the king moves out of the way to f1. Now g5, we have seen these moves before, so let's just keep going. Knight to c3. Now bishop to g7, d4, building up in the center. We have d6, and now knight to d5. And Morphy says, actually this isn't so good. He says knight to f3 or e5 is the correct play, but McDonnell does neither of these. He goes knight to d5, and we have king to d8 because this knight is threatening to fork the king and the rook, so Labourdonnais just defends by moving the king to d8. We have bishop to e2 now, so moving this same bishop a second time. Morphy says this is a weak move which we cannot commend. Okay, so what was better? Well, we still think that knight to f3 was better. Okay, so McDonnell played bishop to e2 back. We have knight to c6 from Labourdonnais, and now e5. Again, the engine says that knight to f3 was better, but okay, e5. Knight on g to e7, which attacks the central white knight, and instead of capturing here, McDonnell just retreats it back to c3. And we continue with knight to f5 from Labourdonnais, knight to f3 attacking the queen, so the queen backs off to h6, and now knight to e4 and f6 from Labourdonnais. And maybe a good move here would be to capture the central pawn, but McDonnell goes for the capture on f6, so the bishop captures back. It's protected by the queen here, so he doesn't mind this attack from the knight. g4, and Morphy says, White, on account of the feeble manner in which he conducted the opening, has anything but a good game at this stage. This move only serves to enhance his difficulties. Well, okay, Morphy, it's attacking the knight, so the knight captures the pawn here. And now the engine suggests that pawn to h4 here is a good move, but McDonnell doesn't go for that. He goes for king to g2. And we have this bishop capturing this undefended pawn. And now McDonnell pushes h4. We have the bishop captures the knight, and the bishop captures back, and the knight captures the bishop, and the queen captures the knight. So big capture party on f3. We have knight to e5 now, and queen to b3 across the other side of the board. Queen to g6, the queen captures on b7, and rook to c8. Bishop to d2, and Labourdonnais just captures the pawn on the wing, revealing the check on the king, so the king retreats to f1, and Labourdonnais doubles up along the open g-file. And at this point, McDonnell spots a sequence here. He decides to capture the pawn on d6, and Morphy says, well played, but the exposed condition of White's king is such that no play could avert ultimate defeat. Well, okay, Morphy, hold your horses. Let's just see what happens with this. We have c-pawn captures the knight, which is what McDonnell wants, and he does bishop to a5 with check. And now there's only one square for the king to move to, e8, which leaves the rook undefended, so McDonnell captures it, so nicely done. Now here, there are 2 options for Labourdonnais. He can block with the bishop or retreat his king to f7. And actually, blocking with the bishop here is the best move. It actually forces McDonnell to give up the queen in order to prolong the game. For example, if he were to do any random move like this queen is coming in here with check, backed up by the rook, and it's going to be a very quick checkmate, like so. So there is that danger for McDonnell in this position. The actual best move for McDonnell here is to give up the queen. It's defended here, but once the king moves, you have to capture the rook. And now, well, you've given up the queen, and black is just winning. So, yeah, all good for Labourdonnais there. except he moved his king to f7 and the game continues. We have queen to b7 checking again, bishop to e7 blocking, and queen to d5 with check, so centralizing the queen again, king back to f8, rook to d1, so yeah, this rook in the corner wasn't doing very much, so it's good that he's getting it into the game now. f3, so you'll notice that these two pawns are advanced passed pawns, and they're going to become quite dangerous for McDonnell. Rook to d2, defending this g2 square from the queen coming in, and so instead labourdonnais just pushes his h-pawn. And with this, the game is now drawing. McDonnell has clawed his way right back into it, so in your face Morphy. Why is this? Well, he needed to use this move to get his queen to a better position to avoid the perpetual checks that McDonnell will be able to deliver. So let's see what McDonnell does. He goes queen to a8 with check, so the king moves to f7, but this is a light square, so McDonnell of course checks him again. He goes back. We have another check, and labourdonnais isn't going for a draw here. He wants wins, so he moves to a dark square now. Now here, McDonnell wants to keep on the white squares because he needs to keep an eye on this square here where everything's starting to focus on, including the pawns here. So he really wants to stay on the white squares. Maybe a nice move like queen to b7 would be good, but he doesn't do that. He goes for the pawn. He captures it. And this allows labourdonnais to mount his attack. He goes queen to g2. Morphy says, the decisive coup, and one which black evidently contemplated when, at his 29th move, he played h3. Well, okay, Morphy, let's continue, see what happens. Obviously, the queen is under attack here, and McDonnell just grabs it, so not looking so good for labourdonnais, but what happens next? F-pawn captures the rook, which comes with check, so the king goes to g1, and now instead of capturing the second rook, labourdonnais delivers a check. And this is also covering this square, and this square is covered by the pawn, so there's only one square for the king to go to, and now labourdonnais captures the rook and promotes to a queen. So it wasn't really a queen sacrifice, he just got a new one and took all of McDonnell's rooks, so I don't think McDonnell's going to be too pleased about that. But okay, he plays on. We have queen captures the bishop, which comes with check, of course, so king to h6. Queen captures the pawn, which again comes with check, so the king goes to h5. h5. Queen to d5, check again, and rook blocks. Queen to f7 with check again, so the king moves again, and the queen comes back to c4 again with check. Now it seems wherever labourdonnais puts his king, McDonnell will be able to keep checking it with the white queen on the white squares. However, there is one thing that labourdonnais can do to get the white queen off the white squares, and that's to put his knight in the way here. And Morphy says, again, excellently played. A glance at the board will show that this was the only method of avoiding perpetual check. So the queen can't come here because the knight's now guarding this square, and he can't come here, or she can't come here because also the knight's guarding this square. And when he captures the knight, the queen is now on the dark squares and can't continue along these diagonals delivering the checks. So very nice job, labourdonnais. Even though we want you to lose, we do appreciate your good moves, at least occasionally. So we continue, king to h5, and now there are no checks, so good job. We have bishop to b6, and labourdonnais played his queen to h2. And Morphy says, queen to g1 would have brought about a more speedy termination. And this is because once the king moves, the queens get exchanged, and now there's nothing stopping this pawn getting across to the other side and turning into a queen. This rook prevents the king coming over to capture it. Okay, so that looked pretty good, but labourdonnais played h2 instead, and so the king moves to h1. Then we have check from the rook. It's protected by the queen, so it can't be captured. So the king moves again, but then we have a check from the queen. King moves again. Again, a check from the queen, and now the only move is to block with the white queen, so we have a queen exchange on d1, and labourdonnais pushes pawn to h2, and in this position McDonnell resigned, and he said, "Well done, congratulations on being up 14 games to 4. I'll see you again tomorrow." And so he went back to his room, and maybe he thought about never playing the King's Gambit again. Well, we'll see if he does or not in a future game. So thanks very much for joining me today, and I'll see you again next time.